I've been playing Pushmo, or in Europe it's called Pool Blocks.
Look, Valley, I know that
name.
we are both British, and I know that we often talk about how we are on the right side of history with the U's in all of our words and all of this nonsense. But I'm afraid that when it comes to the games industry, it's just so much easier to take the American names for things because all the media is American, and that's what everyone talks about. And so when you say pull blocks to somebody, they might actually not know what you're talking about because of the perpetuation of American media as opposed to, European / British.
So this game was way out in 2011 from Intelligent Systems.
Yes, it is. Actually, that's something I completely forgot about. But Intelligent Systems, one of my favorite developers, and continuing a great track record for a diverse variety of games with Pushmo, I would say.
And you picked this up when it came out, or near?
Yeah, I got it around launch. It was one of the first really major 3DS eShop titles. So it was, very nascent stages of that platform. And obviously 3DS eShop has a lot of great stuff now, but back then it was slim pickings. So as soon as this came out, and it was very cheap, it was like £5 or whatever back then, which I thought was, even for digital games back then, because, 15 was kind of the benchmark for a lot of console stuff. So as soon as I saw it, I was like, okay, this has got good reviews. It looks really cool. It's from a studio I like and know that they do great games. So I picked it up and played quite a lot of it back in the day.
And of course, way back then, around launch, all I would play was Pilot Wings. So I've come a bit late to the party with this one, but it's a cool game. It's that same fresh and addictive feeling you get when you start a game like Box Boy. It's incredibly unique, the way that you're pulling out blocks, jumping up platforms. It makes you really think in a very spatial way, probably even more so than Box Boy, because obviously this is 3D. Box Boy is 2D. I think like Box Boy, it's also much more fun to pick up in smaller bursts, short bursts. And that's kind of difficult with this show because often we try and play a whole game and then talk about it. So with something like this game, a puzzle game, I did find it quite difficult to force myself through long gaming periods because I wanted to try and beat as much of it. And I'll be honest, I didn't actually beat this game. As great and as addictive as it is, it feels like the sweet spot of how long you want to invest time in it is around 6, 7, 8 hours. And for me, and I would argue perhaps the same with Box Boy. I mean, obviously I completed both Box Boy and Box Boy, completed them, and that took a lot longer than that. But I think with this game and Box Boy, to be fair, it feels like the sweet spot is shorter. So I basically said, I'm not really enjoying this after this amount of time. It feels more like a slog, so I'm just going to stop. So I stopped at sort of there's a world called the Nintendo Murals.
Yes, yeah.
So I did all the challenges, for example. I did all the challenge worlds, which is good. But I do like how the worlds are split into tutorials, challenges, and murals. So tutorials do what they say on the tin. Challenges are far more, they're not there to look nice, they're just there to be difficult, and I like that. And I also like,
they get your head whirling, basically.
Exactly. And the murals, they're different items from random
or like
crap.
Sprites, basically,
like
from
sprites.
classic Nintendo games.
Pixelated sprites, and then obviously the Nintendo murals are Nintendo characters, which is quite a nice little touch. I think that it could be leaner, but I completely appreciate that there are people who just go completely crazy for puzzle games like
I
this.
mean, like, look at Picross.
Exactly.
And the new Picross 3D, where people are just dumping hours after hour into that game. It just consumes people in that way. And I'm not sure Pushmo necessarily gets at the same instincts that Picross does. But for me, when I played it, it was certainly something that, as you said, I did in like chunks and bits and pieces. It was like I'd stick on a podcast and play a few puzzles, and I ended up playing maybe 16, 17 hours of it, and I still didn't like finish absolutely everything because there are a lot of puzzles in there. But I really loved it, and I think the case of you trying to play through it in a shorter period of time and make progress, probably not the best way to approach it, unfortunately. Definitely. It's just the kind of the way that we do things is like you wanted to play as much as you can so you can discuss it, but maybe that negatively impacts your impression in the end.
Yeah, so I did about 10 hours and I was happy with that, and I still think it's a great game. I would I think.
I mean, for people who don't know, we haven't really explained the mechanics of it, but it's essentially there are these screens of blocks that are in the background, and you have 3 layers to pull them forward and create platforms for yourself to basically move yourself up. And obviously, like, you can't pull back one if you're going to walk off the edge. You have to pull them from the side if you want to get them further out. So there's a lot of deep mechanics in there, and they throw other things in like hatches and ladders, which will pop you from one place to the other like a teleportation. And generally, as far as the puzzle design goes, I think it's fantastic throughout, and I just think the idea of it is really smart, because a lot of times puzzle games will be like, oh, this is basically Tetris, or this is basically some other generic puzzle game with a different skin on it. I generally think that Pushmo is a more unique and fresh idea than I've seen in a lot of puzzles.
Definitely. It's a fantastic game, and I love puzzle games, but I'm not sort of the mad about them in the same way where I can play them for perhaps over 10, 12, 13, 14 hours. I like I said, I obviously did that with Box Boy. And maybe it's a credit to Box Boy that it managed to keep me around that long. But I felt more determined to get to the end of that game, perhaps, in this time around. But both incredible games.
The other cool thing about Pushmo was it was one of the first titles, I think, to use QR codes on the 3DS, where you would scan them and download new levels to your 3DS, which people had created because there is a level creation tool within the game. Yeah. I remember, like, when it came out, it was a big thing because not many people had kind of messed around with that stuff before. And so I remember downloading a few puzzles from Twitter and people who had made them, and that being a good time. It's a really fun thing to mess around with, actually. But yeah, I think maybe just the conditions in which you played it were very different to when it came out and when I played it. So I can understand that you enjoyed it, but maybe you didn't get as much out of it as I did.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this discussion and would like to hear more, consider subscribing to us on YouTube and following the podcast playlist. You can also find us on iTunes and various other places. Follow us on Twitter at TNL Podcast and email us thisnintendolife@gmail.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.